Hey everyone, welcome to Stuff I Never Learned from a School Book. If you are looking at the bearded one, it must be Monday night, 7 p.m. Central, 8 Eastern, 6 Mountain, 5 Pacific, 2 out in Hawaii, 6 a.m. tomorrow out in Indonesia, and about 9 a.m. tomorrow out in Australia. Welcome to the show. For those of you who do not know me, my name is Tom Springer, and I am the host of Stuff I Never Learned from a School Book. If you're a repeat offender, which many of you will be, welcome back. I know it's been 2 weeks because we're on our new push to where I'm doing a show every 2 weeks instead of every week, because in the off weeks I'm starting to do podcasts. I still owe you guys a couple of podcasts. I know, I apologize, but we're moving the right direction. We're going to see how this goes for a while, and if I need to, I will go back to weekly shows. But right now I'm trying something a little different, trying to expand out a little different things and give me room to go out to different locations as well. So welcome to the show. I already got some people rolling in saying hello, but I do have on a guest, and this is the one that I initially put up the advertisement for that I put in for the 12th, and then realized, hey, I'm not very smart. So I had to go ahead and correct that, and I went ahead and put in the correct person for the 12th, which was for Joni White Buffalo, which was my first mentor, and this is who I was talking about bringing on. See, I was so excited to bring her on that I actually posted for her 2 weeks early. But anyways, I'm going to go ahead and bring on Janessa, and we will all say hi to Janessa. Hi, Miss Janessa. How are you? Welcome to the show. Hi.
Hello. Good evening. Thanks for having me, Tom.
Oh, yeah. So people are popping in to say hi. There's Miss Ingrid.
Hello, Ingrid.
Uilani Ku'ule. I love saying that name. But she goes by Uilani, or she goes by Mary. She is saying hello from Hawaii. Stuart is our seasoned gentleman, I should say, from Texas. I won't call him old. I'll call him seasoned. So I will just go ahead and say hi to him that way. He's actually seeing us out in Texas. And Miss Nicole, of course, is saying hi to you. I normally tell people how we first met, so I will do that right now. So Janessa is local to me, and she was working at, I always forget if it's Holistic or Mystic, which ones you work, one of the fests. Or both.
I think it was probably Mystic Fest. I've been at both, but I think we met at Mystic Fest.
I think originally we met at Mystic Fest, and I walked around, and I passed you like 2 or 3 times, feeling an energy, but I wasn't quite sure who it was from, because there were so many people in that area, and I kept having to circle back around to figure out where the energy was coming from, because I wanted to make sure that it was coming from you. And not from someone who was standing by you. So after I passed you a couple of times and the energy location did not change, then I was able to identify that it was you that was pulling me towards you. And it was a very awesome amount of energy. And I'm like, okay, I need to go talk to you. Obviously, I'm a shy, quiet person, so I had to get out of that shell, and I had to force myself to come talk to you. But I presented myself to you, said, hey, don't be alarmed. I'm not a stalker. This is who I am. This is what I do. Would you be interested in coming on my show? And do you remember your first response?
I don't know. It could have been anything.
Your response was, I don't think I'll be a good fit for your show.
That does sound like me.
And I went, hold on a second. Stand by. Let's talk about this. And you weren't 100% convinced. So the first time we actually met, we left without coordinating anything. And then I turned into a semi-stalker, simply because I saw you again at one of the fests here in the local area. And I saw you again, and I said, hey, how do you feel about, have you reconsidered coming on my show? And you were like, well, tell me a little more about it. And then when I started telling you that it's not just paranormal investigation, it's not just cryptid, it's healing energy, it's touch, it's refocusing your life, it's quantum, and all that other stuff. And you went, oh, I fit this area better than what your card says, or better than what I understood the first time. And you went, let me think about it. And I went, oh, goodness. So the third time I came back around and ran into you one of those places, I think you just got tired of seeing me, and you're like, fine, I'll do it.
I think I grew into my speaking. It's taken me some time to find my voice and to feel confident in being able to show up, which is really interesting, really, because with my past criminal justice career, I had to speak in public uh, gain support for drug court, which was not something that was super fond. A lot of people feel like that shouldn't be part of the, justice system.
Yeah.
But it's interesting when you go to do something that is really your purpose of how much more timid I became about that and feeling like, oh, if I have these great opportunities, like I have to show up and be really certain with what I'm doing and be really polished and, just Janessa. So here we are, and it's all interconnected. You were right, and I finally came around, and I'm so grateful for your patience.
Oh, I'm so glad this gets recorded because I actually have a woman saying I was right recorded. Yes.
Yes. I have no attachment to that. Everybody can be right. We're all right in our own realities. There are so many realities to live in.
But I am very, very happy that you decided to come on and to say hello and to come share your wisdom with us and your knowledge and what you do, which leads me to what everyone knows is my first question. My audience is very well adapted to this. First, we have to say hi to Zhang because I told you she'd be coming on. She's my friend from Indonesia. Hi, Zhang. How are you doing? But my question that my audience knows is coming is, please explain what you do and how you got into it.
Yeah, let's go. So I say I'm an empowerment coach. I'm a coach and a healer, a lot more healer than coach, but I think it's all one and the same. And because my main focus is on energy psychology, people would see the psychology and they'd call me and they're like, do you take insurance? Like, no, insurance doesn't take me. We'll talk about why that is later in this show. But anyway, I shifted to the language of coach simply because energy psychology seemed to create some really muddy water for people. And I am just knee deep in personal growth, empowerment, where we get to be really in our agency and autonomy of life, creating the life that we want to live in and easily stepping through obstacles. And on the other side of those obstacles is nothing but opportunity for people. And so that is my main focus, which comes from a full facet of humanness, right? Like we work with mind, emotions, spirit, the physical body. You can't leave one part behind. So I mentioned I had a criminal justice degree. I was in the criminal justice degree, but career. I did have a degree though too. So I was in the criminal justice field for 2 decades. And when I worked in the prison, I was in a paramilitary training for the emergency response team. And we learned in that training, you leave no one behind. And so I've really morphed that in the work that I do now with mindset and psychology, that you leave no part behind. You leave no part of yourself behind, mind, body, or soul, to really live your best life and to be the best version of yourself. And so I just come alongside people and help them make their life be easier wherever they're feeling like they're getting stuck, and help them master the art of being human. Humanness is truly an art, not so much like the complex science that we want it all to be. Science is really important, but once you get the art of it down, it's pretty simple stuff. Not always easy, but it can be simple.
Yeah. And I noticed that there's a handful of times I will say something and you'll give me that look like you can say it. You can say hi to Shannon. Hi, Shannon.
Hi, Shannon.
But I noticed that there's a handful of times I will say something, and I know it's me being me, but I know sometimes you'll look at me and you'll be like, yeah, you can't say that about yourself. So, no, I'm trying. So it's
well, I learned a lot from experience.
Right.
Sure, I've said it all before to myself.
Yeah, and it's funny though because I have you and I have a couple other people that look at me like they're my disappointed version of my mom, and I'm like, oh. Okay, I'm not saying stuff like that. I'm sorry. I apologize. But
so when you ask how I got into this, it was really a transition from that criminal justice. I mean, it's kind of all the same mission, right? I was helping people, but rather than court mandated or law, interpreting the law and applying it, really working with people who want that growth. They want something better for themselves, and being able to do it in a way that is long lasting. Because I mentioned drug court, right? I worked with a lot of addiction for a lot of my criminal justice career. You see people relapse and relapse, and that's one of the sayings, like addiction, it comes with withdrawal and relapse. It doesn't have to, actually. If we step into the world of alternative options, you can step down so you don't have withdrawal, and then you can have lasting, because you're not that person. Your identity changes. The traumas and the wounds that you had that led you to the coping mechanism of addiction, all of that shifts. So you don't have that inner desire still lingering. And I talk about that from a very personal experience. I had an eating disorder, late teens, early 20s, for 7 years. And so even after I wasn't in active bulimia and anorexia, I would still have the thoughts quite regularly. And that's the amazing part of the energy psychology, is it shifts you so much from the within that you're not having the thought, even the compulsion for, and that's just speaking to addiction specifically, to the behavior. So through my own, trials, pain, wanting something better for myself, wanting better health, I scheduled an appointment with an energy psychologist, in seeing that someone in drug court was getting crazy results really quickly, like things I'd never seen happen before. And I had no idea what they were doing. I just knew I needed it. So it was my birthday present to myself for my 30th birthday. And then I went on to go through much of my own healing journey. And then I was nudged by this individual of like, hey, you might want to go to this training and learn this modality to use in your own healing path. And I got the manual. I registered. I'm like, I've done crazier things. Sure, why not? Let's go. I have time off from work. I'll just use some vacation, whatever. It's good. And so registered for the course, got the manual. I had 2 people want to experience this energy session. And I'm like, whoa, guys, like, I'm not trained. There's no liability on me if we're doing this. Let's just be really clear about where our boundaries are at right now. And both of them said they had life-changing experiences, walked away, life-changing experience before I knew how to do what it was I was doing, right? And so I realized in those moments before I went to training that there was something much bigger for me in this thing. I was going to go off to Boston for a week of vacation to learn. Oh. And so from there, my path slowly and then quickly unfolded before me.
Yeah, I was going to ask how that kind of rolled over from criminal court to, because you can study that, but I was unsure how you got to where you are now. What did you study? What did you do? What brought you into that path? And you kind of answered it before I had the chance to question. So apparently you're in my head answering my questions before I can answer, which is cool.
People do things like that. You know how it works, Tom.
I know how it works, unfortunately, yes. So the person you saw was the person you saw that was being helped by somebody else was identified as an energy psychologist.
I don't know if it, it might not be important. I don't know if that's what she would call herself, but considering we went and trained in the same stuff, it's just easiest because there's so many modalities out there.
Yeah, I just didn't know because like you said, you don't identify yourself as an energy psychologist because it kind of comes with an additional task that you feel you need to fulfill, like insurance and stuff like that. So I didn't know if that person was, and then you just and that's really what you are, but you just decided to take your own name to something else. So kind of avoid stuff like the word psychologist in its scientific form, and so you went with coach instead. That I was just trying to check the background on why that happened. But it's interesting. But you talk about you were helping people, or you can help people, or people can help themselves with their addictions, and you dealt with it with drug addiction. And can it be what you do? Can it be in any form of, or does it, slower in English. Sorry, it's Monday evening, so my mind's going a mile a minute, and my mouth doesn't want to work that fast right now. Is it only addictions that you work with for people? Like, does it have to be like a food addiction, or does it have to be like a sleep type of issue or anything else? So what is it that you do in a broad spectrum to kind of say, hey, I covered this realm of is it just all life issues or concerns that we have? What's up, Jason? How you doing? But I didn't know if you if there's a specialty that you do, or is it just like an all-encompassing, I can do whatever your life needs, I can help get you in that direction type of thing?
Yeah, it's all-encompassing. And if people jump into Facebook, I have been on there very consistently about 5 days a week, talking about different things and personal development in the way our emotions and our mindset and all of it ties together, our spirit. I do have a particular fondness to addiction and work very successfully with it. So if I had to pick a specialty, I would say it would be addiction, especially for the way that people experience such a different way of walking out of that addiction versus the inner battle that they live in throughout that addiction. But yes, it's general life coaching, general healing. And I really just, like you, the energy, right? I just rely on my energy to attract to me the people that are meant to work with me, who are going to get the results that they desire.
Yeah.
And it's just a matter of connecting with, where you are, where do you want to be, and bridging that gap and seeing how we can get them from what their reality currently is to what they're wanting to actually experience in life, so they can live the life of their dreams. Like, that's not a fairy tale that we get sold to from Disney. That's reality.
Yeah, we're not stuck, but we're not stuck in the one right now. We can actually adjust it as need to, or as we want to make the realities ours. Are you okay if I share your Facebook site?
Yeah.
Everybody.
Yep.
So, okay.
Yep, feel free.
So give me a second, folks. I'm just typing up here. Go figure. I know.
Type away, Tom. Yeah, one of the things I really wanted to talk about this evening while you're typing is some of the history that we really haven't learned in a school book that influences how we think very, very strongly. And there also is this interconnectedness of all of our systems. And that creates a very submissive, a very obedient human if we don't invoke our own critical thinking and really question and be curious about ourselves and the life we're living and the events that are going on around us. And so I think it's first important to point out that humans are really supposed to have thoughts fueled by something higher of themselves, but our ego is very attached to the things we think. And our ego very much believes that we're separate and those thoughts are all ours. And they're not necessarily. The way that we think can truly be programmed, which a lot of you likely have talked about on various other shows, because that's not new to this world, even within paranormal, how you communicate with paranormal.
Right.
But if we're not paying attention to what we're taught in school or about life, and we don't pay attention to consciousness or critical thinking, then we can just get caught up in the fact that we live in this world and it has all of these systems. And it's just such a permanent part of our reality. We can't even imagine life outside of those systems. What would it look like?
Yeah, just our little bubble.
Yeah. And we also rely on the systems to solve our problems for us, which arguably I would say is concerning at best, because most of the private companies out in the world tend to have better solutions than what our government can come up with. Mm-hmm. And also when it comes to like programming, I think it's really important to establish, because a lot of people out there believe that the government has so much control over the people. I just want to reference the power pyramid quickly, that we, the people, are at the bottom of the power pyramid.
Mhm.
I don't know if you guys know this, but it's that separation, lack of unity that divides us, which is why our power is so diluted. And we're at the bottom of the pyramid. This is why consciousness is so important, so that we can all be connected. We are one. But just above us, the people, is the government. They're second from the bottom, guys. Do you know this?
Yep.
The money, follow the money. So the banks and the money is at the top of the pyramid and has the most power.
Yeah.
So what you do actually matters a lot. That's something that I really want to tie in here as we talk about like the government and our thinking and being programmed through the world we live in and various different things. We also, because of ego and separateness, tend to think, well, my choices, little old me, just Janessa, really can't have much impact. So it doesn't matter. Like, it's going to take so much more than just me, but it all starts with one person. And so if there's anything that I can do here this evening, it is hopefully to inspire and light a fire under you that the way you are living and the decisions you are making will have profound impact, not just for you, but the people you love, and it ripples far and wide. And you truly can have global impact just from the way you live because of that ripple, if you do so intentionally.
Yeah. So I have a question from Dawn. Dawn is asking, so if I am a drinker but seriously have no idea what made me start at a very, very young age, can you help with this?
Absolutely. Absolutely. We get underneath the symptoms into the subconscious, into those things that happen at a young age, even ancestral, because, you know, there is genetic component to addiction ran in my family. It's also programmed into personality structure. I work with that through the Enneagram. So that is a really solid yes. We can absolutely get to the root of that and pluck it out so that you're not constantly in that inner torment of, I don't want to drink, but I'm going to drink, but I want to drink, but I don't want to drink actually.
Yeah.
Because that's a nightmare, living nightmare.
Yeah. And Rosie says, is it because we as people give it that power? Yes, I do believe so. Control our thoughts. So I think we're so limited on what our thought processes are that, you know, what you were saying before, to me, it's really, I relate a lot to movies and music just because of my background, and who I am when I was a kid, that, when you're talking about it and you're like, well, I live in this world, but there's this other world around me that I'm basically unaware of, or I have no control over. It really takes me back to The Matrix, with the Keanu Reeves movies, for people who don't know who that is. But to The Matrix, to where they're living in their own little personal world that they feel that they've created for themselves, and this is all that matters to them, is this tiny little world, and there's no way out of it. Because they're so built into the system, that's just kind of how they perceive everything as. So it kind of sounds like it has a touch of that to it.
Yes. And that's I would love to start walking people out of that matrix, out of that system here tonight by talking about different systems. And so on Eyes Wide Open, I have an internet radio show. It's every Wednesday at 5 p.m. Central Standard Time. But I went through all of the systems that I'd like to just kind of scratch the surface with you guys here this evening. And each of those shows are 55 minutes. So what I have to share with you guys that you haven't learned in the school book here tonight is going to be a pretty condensed version of what I've shared in more length on the radio show. So if there's something that really interests you, please know there's more resources out there between my blog, the radio show. Reach out to me. I can drop you links. Tom has the links scrolling on the screen right now, and all of my Eyes Wide Open radio show episodes are there on that website if you scroll down, so you can find them. But what we live in this world, like Tom was talking about, this little world, is where centralization of power occurs through both government, but also private entities. And they really do that on purpose for various different reasons. Largely, it limits visibility, right? So wherever there's not transparency, it's easier to invoke control over people. We saw this happen with Nazi soldiers during that whole horrible Holocaust, because the soldiers believed that they were doing something that was virtuous. They didn't know what the overall overarching mission was. This was done intentionally. Only people really much higher up in those ranks knew what was happening, but they led the soldiers to believe that they were doing something that was virtuous and for a good cause. This is the same type of thing that happens with the centralization of power within government, within private companies. You know, security clearances, you have a need to know, you get to see what you are told you see, you do what you are told to do, you don't see the whole overarching picture. And not only is there a visibility issue, but it also creates complexity. And a confused mind, the brain uses a lot of our energy to think. And a confused brain doesn't want to expend the energy. Like, we're in survival mode, right? We want to conserve our energy. So we don't want to do what it takes to figure this out. So a confused mind will just be disinterested and walk away. And it creates a people, like, living in such complex systems that people have to really spend a lot of time and fortitude to unwind and unravel and understand, creates a people that are disinterested in it. And a people that are disinterested in it are people that are submissive and obedient, right? And I'm not here to say, like, we need to fight. I am not a fighter. If you learn anything about me, it will be that the very last approach I take to anything in this world we live in is fighting. But I do take a very passionate stance about being aware, knowing what's going on, having autonomy and agency over your thinking, over your emotions, over your spiritual connection, because those three main pillars are going to keep you in a place where you are not influenced by everything around us that is built to have us thinking and believing in certain things. All right, so I always talk from notes just a little bit, especially with this, so that I don't get too far off track or elaborate for too long, because that can happen too. So I really want to pose the question that, just to think about, like, how are your thoughts and beliefs being controlled?
Stuart says, isn't that a form of fighting?
What specifically? Not fighting? Not fighting is a form of fighting?
Oh, I think he's talking about you're trying to get us to focus on the three pillars. Isn't that a form of fighting?
Mm.
And this is what we get from Stuart. He's an outside the box thinker a lot. So
I love it. No, I think it's the intention behind it.
Yeah.
Like, to be aware doesn't mean that you're going to step forward in fighting energy. And regulating your nervous system, processing your emotions, certainly down regulates any desire to be reactive. It allows you to stay in your power and respond. So yeah, I think that's a super valid question. And the intention behind it, if your intention is to be very clear on what's going on, and then you go into the offensive mode to do something about it, I agree with you, probably, but I'm not really encouraging the latter. I am encouraging people to be in their power, because someone in their power cannot be stirred by fear in a lot of the tactics that are used in our society and culture.
Yeah, and you mentioned earlier that you use notes a lot to stay focused in what you're doing, and to make sure you don't go off tangent and go too far into the rabbit hole. And then Rosie wants to know what no squirrel moments. So
no, you can have all the squirrel moments.
So people are ready. I warned you ahead of time that my audience knows the squirrel moments will happen on the show. So
no, I love the squirrel moments. I welcome them. I invite them. I just want to not be the ringleader of all of them.
Right. So Rosie says, I'm only in control of my mind and my actions and my words.
Mm-hmm.
So,
yeah, but that has such a huge influence on when your mind and your actions and your response is one of peace instead of being reactive,
Yeah.
or it's one of love, even when you're activated and triggered by something, what you're going to get from the other person and what their day might go on to look like that ripple effect is so real. So
Yeah.
yes, absolutely. And you have no idea, really, truly, of how much, if you're coming in with peace and love, how much that creates a continued ripple of that versus coming in being really edgy or feisty or spicy in a fighting kind of way.
Yeah, she does have a great effect on others. It does. So I will tell you that I work in an office full of old, crotchety men like myself. We're a bunch of retired military who are all civilians now that work for the government. And they are very adamant about things used to be great the way they used to be. And they complain a lot about things nowadays. And so I am one of great experiment. Let's just put it that way. So I will purposely come in there and say something that is meant to be a positive. Like I will compliment somebody on something. And it's weird how they can't adjust to that. Like it almost breaks them. Like they're not used to that positive aspect of being in the office, that their office experience always has to be negative. And so if I try to do something positive, I just laugh at it because I try to bring stuff in or whatever else. Again, shy, quiet, type of person. And but I'll come in and I will do what I call experimentation with them. It's really social engineering is really what it's termed as. But I social engineer the heck out of them, and I will do that through a positive format to see what they Man, some people are hard to break. It's amazing how well they are ingrained in, like they've just dug their toes into the sand and they just refuse to be released from that anger or from that negativity that's around them. No matter what you try to do, they're just like, nope, not today. I don't like your positive attitude. You can go take it somewhere else. And I'm like, well, I blew that experiment.
It's a great example of fixed mindset versus growth mindset.
Yeah.
And people with fixed mindset, they are fixed like a statue in Washington, D.C.
Right? Yeah. They just do not. And it's pretty interesting because I do it on purpose. I go into my day. I plan out a lot of my morning driving to work, saying, "All right." And I will tell you, you're going to roll your eyes at me, but I go in there going, "What is my best way to annoy these people?" And I know that it's through trying to be a positive person is what's the most annoying. I have a person who cannot say the word "feel" because it's an evil 4-letter word. It just won't come out of his mouth. So I purposefully do stuff to try to get him to engage in that aspect and everything else. And man, I'll tell you what, you do this on a daily basis. I only do it for fun, and that's a challenge. So,
well, I have the Enneagram on my I can't word today either. It's Monday. I have the Enneagram on my side. If you haven't heard of the Enneagram, it's a personality structure typing system, and it's amazing. And it has helped relations just from knowing it, not even doing any of the personal development work in it, because our intelligence system is broke up into 3 different: head, heart, gut. And we're all pre-programmed to either use rational logic, thinking, head, heart, feeling, or the gut instinct. And our gut points typically, like, they know it, they have that gut instinct, but then they pop into their head and talk themselves out of it. So you're dealing obviously with a head point who absolutely thinks there's no value to feelings. They do absolute no good.
Yeah.
Right.
Yep.
And so there's different motivators and fears that's mapped out within the Enneagram as well. And I bet if you learned it, you would quickly hear and discern with those people what their, Enneatype is based upon the words they speak. And you would know what they fear, and you would know what they're motivated by, and you would be able to use those motivators to move them in the direction.
So that's the other, I do that already. I am very good about reading reading the people. So I think it's just a built-in ability of mine that I can read them. And when I ask them to do things, I base it off of them, how I know they're going to interact with certain words I use, certain actions I use, how I set them up for it first. Like one of them, I know I have to feed his ego and then ask him to do something. One of them, I have to basically compliment the work he does to show that he is appreciated, and then have him and request him to do some things. And so I really look at what they're really what we're talking about, but I really look at their design on what makes them tick and feed off of that, get them to move in the direction I want them to go. And again, for me, that's just straight back to my social engineering courses I took back then, but I'm reading the person. I'm reading what feeds their ego or feeds their process to make them feel better, to want to do things rather than feel like they're being forced to do things. So that's kind of something I've always dealt with. And so, but I play on secondary experiments with them, just going straight in on purpose, saying, my goodness, today's a fantastic day. I think we should, and they're just like, oh God, here comes Tom again. And just to see their reactions, just to see what they do. So I kind of do both. I know what the reactions are if I want them to do things for me, based off of if I just want to get under their skin, because I know they're going to be very irritated by me being a very positive, happy man that day.
The workplace is always such an interesting family dynamic, really, because you spend so many hours with those people. So I work with family dynamics as well in my work. And our individual families all have their patterns and quirks and things that are dysfunctional, right? Well, so do our workplace families, truly. And so I think the workplace family is an experiment in itself.
It really, especially when they're all a bunch of old retired military, because they are mostly all set in one direction, in one way. Mm-hmm. And to get them to move another direction is very monumentous, would be a fantastic word for that. You're really trying to move mountains at that point. So just to get them to alter what their normal lifestyle is that they've been doing for 20, 30, 40 years. So,
do you think the government attracts people with the fixed mindset, or do you think that they mold them, or do you think it's a bit of both?
I think over time it has shifted. I think initially the people that came in with the mindset were the ones that already signed up for the military. So they didn't have to mold us at all. And I say us because that's how I was. I knew I was going military. I was motivated. I was dedicated. I was going military. Whereas now they've had to kind of rewrite the script to give them other incentives to join the military. But even the way they handle them in basic training or in the initial course has shifted. When I came in, everything was about brute force. It was, you're going to do it this way or you're going to get punched in the mouth. Now it's, well, we have to call a timeout and we're going to come talk to you about your feelings and figure out what's triggering you so we can make sure that we can get that clear. And that way we can move on with basic training and you will be a better operating individual based off of me feeding your needs. So over time that has adjusted. And I've seen it because as I told you before, I have been now doing in and around the military for 34 years. So I have seen that adjustment. I know I've had my nose cut open and punched in the face by my TI, but now today when the kids come out and I talk to them, they're like, oh yeah, they said we got to use our cell phones once a day to reach back home. And if I feel like that they're being too aggressive with me, I can basically call an academic standoff and they have to walk away from me for 10 minutes to cool down. And I'm like, the TI is not even mad at you. They're trying to mold you. And like, no, they get mad at me. And I can't have that. It distracts me. So it's a different adjustment period on how the military has gone about training their individuals.
So interesting. I have a philosophy that in life, we start out as babies, right? We can't meet our own needs. Mm-hmm. We have to be fed held, everything comes from another human, right? And as we go through life, the lessons of life, the education of life is for us to meet our own needs. So hearing you talk about they're having their needs met from someone outside of them. And
Yeah.
I'm also, when I say have your needs met, I'm not necessarily talking about having a roof over your head, your food.
Right.
I'm talking about like love, feeling significant,
Mm-hmm.
security or safety, right? And being able to have that through your connection to source and what you create for yourself, that you don't need it from the people around you. There's so many relationships and people who struggle so hard because they continue to look for their partner to feed these needs that they have. And
Right.
it drains the partner. It creates a lot of unhappiness in the relationship. So it's perplexing. And while you were talking, I had a follow-up question to that whole like, wow, they're feeding their needs instead of teaching them how to grow up. Maybe it'll come back to me, but it's escaped me.
It really is a different mind growth. Because when I go in and I talk to them now, I can ask the student, I can ask the military member now, why did you come to the military? And their answers are so different than because I wanted to serve my country. A lot of them are like, well, I wasn't going to have a place to live, or this is the best way for me to get my college degree, or this is the best way for me to get my foot in the door for a job I'm looking for. And I'm like, so how many of you, and I asked this question out loud on purpose to a group of individuals who were over in my section. There was about 40 of them that I was in a class with. And I said, how many of you believe that if war were actually to kick off and you had to actively participate in taking someone else's life and knew what you were doing was going to affect somebody else's life and possibly take it, how many of you would be conscientious objectors? And about half the class went. And I'm like, then you're in the wrong career field. You should not be part of the military. Our job is to kill people. That's what we do for a living. And they were like, and they never thought about that. And so when I tell them, look, you don't understand that because I teach something right now called point dropping, and it's literally how to drop bombs on other people. And when I tell them, guess what? When you build this out and that that information gets sent off to a weaponeer who puts it into a bomb and puts the coordinates in, it drops and it strikes somebody and 20 people die. They're like, well, I don't want to do my job. And I'm like, well, what did you think you were signing up for? So it's interesting to see that kind of difference too, how everyone thinks it's just a way to get from point A to point B, but there's no consequences in between. They just think I'm going to get a steady paycheck and I don't have to worry about buying my clothes because the government's going to buy me the ugly green stuff that I got to wear every single day. And I got to go hang out with my friends and I got to look on the computer all day. No, you actually have a job to do. And it literally is to defend your country with your life. And a lot of them didn't like that.
Yeah. I can relate to that. While I was a probation officer, I thought I was being shot at.
Yeah.
And I saw, all of the police officers that were there. We were serving a warrant and we can't transport in government vehicles. So we always had to have units with us. And because it was a gang member, we had the gang unit. So it was more than one unit. And we thought shots were being fired. It sounded like shots were being fired very close.
Yeah.
And to see all of these people run to gunshots.
Right.
And knowing that if I had been an officer who was carrying a firearm, which I wasn't, they don't allow probation to do that in the state of Nebraska, I would have been running with them.
Right.
And now I look back and I'm like, it takes a certain kind of person and programming to think it's a good idea to run toward gunshots.
You're right.
And call me soft. I don't care.
No.
Like, I don't think that killing people in war and, having that condition is really truly what we're spiritually created to be.
Yeah. Humans. I don't see, I don't want to put that word in your mouth or saying you're putting words in my mouth, but I don't see that as being soft. I just see that as being in the wrong dynamic for your life.
Sure.
Because I am built to be a protector. I am built to run into the line of fire to take the bullet for you, which I've done twice. So I know what I'm talking about. That's what I am built for. That's the reason I look like a rhino, the way I'm shaped, because I will run head on into gunfire and not think twice about it. That's my job. But a lot of the people who sign up for the military now don't have that mindset. That's why I straight up told them, pray for the next 3.5 years you're in the military, nothing ever happens, because you will be expected to run into that gunfight. And you will freeze, and you will not know what to do. And it's going to take someone that does do that type of stuff to come bail you out and to come save you, because you're just going to curl up into a fetal position and be stuck until I come and get you. And I'm brutally honest when I talk to them about that and about their lives and their choices they made, especially when it comes to the military, because although it's considered an old mindset, how I think, because everything now is playing video games to bomb people with drones and everything else, it's still taking a human life. And if you cannot wrap your head around that's what you're doing, then there's a disconnect either in understanding what you're doing, because you're doing it from sitting in a base 3,000 miles away, 10,000 miles away, and you're dropping a bomb and you don't see the person explode, or there's just something, or you just don't understand that's what you're doing, type of thing. So
I use the soft language because I felt like I turned soft. That was really more of towards something I worked through in changing from being programmed to not respond to trauma to being very sensitive. Like, hey, I'm dealing with trauma right now. Let's deal with it today so that it doesn't store in my body tissue and turn into disease or injury and like erode my happiness as a human.
Yeah.
I choose my happiness. But I felt very soft in the beginning because I'm like, this is not the me I've always known. Like, we are chop, chop, let's go, protect the people, do the thing, protect your community, safeguard your country. Like, this is my oath.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. And again, as a spirituality, we sign up for our lives and everything happens for a reason. Correct. And I wasn't saying you were calling anyone soft, but I know that was your analogy of yourself. You were like, whoa, I would not do that. No, that is not something I would want to do. And so I completely understand that. But it's interesting because now you just talked about something that I never thought of before, which you do, when you talked about when you come across things like that, it's almost like something that festers within you and forms some form of disease, or can turn into something that is not positive. It's a very negative reaction inside of your body, subconsciously, whatever it is, that you may not even recognize, but it is damaging you on the inside, whether you know it or not.
Mm-hmm.
So
yeah, this is a great time to talk about the healthcare versus sick care system out there. Why insurance doesn't take alternative medicine. I'll just quickly dive into the history of that, like really quickly, that in around 1910, Rockefeller, like there's a lot of people involved in our history, and Rockefellers get brought up an awful lot. He wasn't alone, but he was a very wealthy man, and he ran a lot of campaigns to move holistic health into an education-based medicine for two reasons. First of all, he was highly invested in the education system because he created people who would work in his oil fields and factories. If you think about your education day at school, it mirrors a 40-hour work week. It trains you through rote memory, not critical thinking. What do you need to do in a factory? You need to know how to do one thing on a machine, and you need to know how to do it over and over and over again. And you can only step off the line and go to the bathroom and have breaks when you're told, and we have school bells. Mr. Rockefeller invested over $180 million back in the 1920s-ish for the education system, which now converts to like 31 billion in today's time and age. Like he dropped a mighty penny to be able to determine what was going to be in the curriculum. So he also dropped money on campaigns to get people to buy into this new healthcare that was education-based and that required pharmaceuticals. Or used pharmaceuticals. I shouldn't say it required it. Why? Well, what creates pharmaceuticals? Lots and lots of petrol is used in pharmaceutical production. What did Mr. Rockefeller own? Oil fields. So he was a very, very brilliant businessman and invested very broadly on a lot of things that created the world we live in today. So because we needed standardized medicine, with an education base, not alternative, not holistic, not herbal. We now have this pharmaceutical where we treat a lot of symptoms, and then there are side effects to the pharmaceuticals that are given that create more side effects. Now, don't get me wrong, there are places for westernized education-based medicine.
Right.
Wholeheartedly believe that. Totally believe. My father, I may not be alive today without that. So I am not like anti-medicine. However, I do believe very, very, very firmly that our bodies are really a feedback mechanism and machine. And so everything that we experience emotionally, mentally, physically gets stored in our physical body. And it's not that our body is breaking down when we have something, when we don't feel well, when we're having symptoms. Those symptoms are actually our body communicating with us that there's something stuck and stored and trapped in there that wants out, whether it's emotions, generational stuff that we carry, but it's just telling us that there's something there and it needs to be released. It needs to be healed. And if we are on the healthcare, right, that leading edge of, oh, I'm experiencing trauma and I want to be on top of it now so that it doesn't manifest into, for me personally, beyond eating disorder, I had chronic bronchitis. I was not a very healthy individual, even though I looked the part on the outside. Like I went to the gym, I lifted my weights, I was fairly fit. I ate my chicken and my vegetables once I didn't have my eating disorder, but I wasn't really that healthy overall, which I wouldn't have known without learning how to read my blood labs for myself and know which nutrients pairs with what blood markers. All of these things I teach people because I think it's incredibly important for us to be advocates. That's where our power is, in our own health and in our own wellness, and being able to regulate the nervous system, being able to process trauma when it's occurring, because life, like we tend to live in this world that is just like trauma generators happening. I had a very traumatic 2022 and 2023 wasn't too far behind it.
Yeah.
And I feel like with all of the tools that I had, both from working in the criminal justice field and then learning how to process trauma and do what I do with energy psychology, it is the only way that I walked through that situation and came out on the other side where I am now, totally in my power, actually wiser, actually having a better idea of what's going on in my body, in the people around me, in the systems, family systems, in our government systems, in our societal systems, worldwide, all of it. Like my expansion, consciousness and awareness and spiritual connection, having foresight of things that were to come that I probably would have rather not known, all of that actually increased. And somehow I came out the other side of this. Like, I don't know. It's still mind blowing to me. I lose my words around it. Like, I am so much more in my power. I'm so much wiser. I'm so much softer, and in a good way, right? Not in the way that was like 10 minutes ago where I was calling myself soft, but in a soft way of like really connecting truly with people with a compassion that I didn't have before.
Yeah.
So,
yeah. And it was interesting because I watched you just the small increments. I mean, I'm not with you every single day like a lot of people are, but you and I are friends on Facebook, so I got to see some of what you were going through, and you and I talked about it a couple of times as well. But your messages on Facebook, and if you're not following her, folks, on Facebook, go follow her on Facebook, because she's very much an open book on Facebook. But you can tell when you're like, okay, here I am. And then like 2 days later, you're like, I am growing from this because of this. And you're like, I've adjusted myself to, instead of looking at it this way, I'm looking at it this way now. And it shows me a different path on what I can do and how to, instead of being angry with it, how I can use that to help me because of what I'm going through. So it was for me, even like I said, it wasn't as much as a lot of people got to witness, but for me, it was a very cool transformation I was watching happen with you throughout all of last year. because that's really when you and I kind of connected was last year, and I was watching that happen. Again, folks, I'm not stalking her. She's on my Facebook. I see the writing.
Last year is also when I went public with it too. So in 2022, we weren't able, and because it's public, like I'll just share, it's a really long, elaborate story. If you want to know all the ins and outs of it, it's on my blog, it's on my radio show, like it's out there. Yeah. But my husband was unexpectedly, and we weren't married at the time. We were engaged to be married. He was unexpectedly investigated for a crime. Very bizarre. I'll just leave it at that. There's a lot of details to that. I blew the cover of the FBI agent outside of our home on Valentine's Day, and that's when it all began in 2022. And so my life was flipped completely upside down. From at the time I was working as an officer for the Department of Homeland Security. So from professional standpoint, while I had my coaching business and I was actually planning on leaving my coaching business, I was going to submit my 2-week notice the Monday after my husband lost his job. He lost his job on a Friday. So that delayed that a little bit. So some of this, like my path was set and I was moving forward in it, but the timeline of it adjusted a little bit. But anyway, he was a couple national news campaigns over this case, pressured by short timelines I've never seen in the criminal justice system before. He had 3 days to get an attorney. He had less than 24 hours to decide whether he was going to take a plea agreement. And I'm telling you, the case is unlike anything I've ever seen in my 2-decade career in the criminal justice field too. So I was subpoenaed because we weren't married to be a witness in the case. And that's when the energetics and the real spiritual side of things really opened up to me, because I'd never felt energy like that before. And I'm a pretty sensitive energy person. Mm-hmm. And I knew that there was something more than just in the physical. There was a lot of spiritual, you want to call it warfare. I don't really love that word, but there's definitely a spiritual component of what is happening here in this life and in this world. And that really cracked me wide open to all that, where before I'm like, I'm raised Catholic. Yes, there's this spiritual stuff. And I don't know, let's not make it too messy to, wow, there is so much more than what our eyes wide open, talk about the seen and unseen. There's so much more than what our eyes perceive that happen, but our bodies, like we have the capability to sense that and feel it. And so then I, dug into the criminal justice system and realized that 20% of people who are incarcerated are incarcerated wrongfully. And this is from exonerations, which requires DNA evidence. This is not plea agreements that might be rushed or leveraged. And that's trillions of dollars that we're spending on incarcerated individuals who are there wrongfully. And so with my personal story, though, my husband ended up being debanked, and just things that are not a part of a non-financial crime, bizarre. And then entering into the plea agreement under the belief that he would receive probation, and he did not. So then in 2023, he served his prison sentence. And so this is where like the trauma of trauma of trauma of trauma compiled over and over and over. And it was a continual, healing process, if you will, but also like the blinders were lifted from anything that was naive in my life to really truly seeing when you go back to they talk about the fourth turning, or these cycles that we have in history. Mm-hmm. When you go back to 1910 to 1905 to 1915, 1920, you really see this large connection between all of the systems. So what I just briefly shared about medical and education and oil, energy, shelter, like our energy is paid. If you think about how many millions of dollars people pay in their lifetime for, I think on average, we use 1 million kilowatts of energy. So you follow the money. Someone commented that earlier. When you follow the money, you always see that there is motivation for the things that are happening in the world and the way that we live. And then when you factor in the power pyramid and the money and the banks are at the top, they're the ones with the power calling the shots, if you will, which I say that very casually and loosely. But yeah, that was an incredible about 2 years of my life that somehow I'm grateful for. I never thought I would say that.
Right.
Yeah, but coming out the other side of it, I love the person I am. Maybe I would have gotten here without that, but kind of thinking I wouldn't have. And I am really grateful. So
Yeah. You made a comment earlier. Kelly says you are very correct on that, by the way. You made a comment earlier and it made me, I still have your page open next to me. But you have a link called Eyes Wide Open. But you also made a comment different from what your eyes see compared to what your body feels. Which one do you rely on more? What you see or what you feel?
I think it depends on the person, right? So how clairvoyant are you? So how dialed in are you to seeing what you see? Or are you just really in the 3D physical? I see this computer screen in front of me and I don't see any spiritual connection to that. I really think that depends on the person. So for me personally, when I make that statement, it is because I know my claircognizance and my clairsentience. So my knowing and my feeling are my strongest, the ones that I'm most tuned into. I wouldn't say that's a blanket statement that would hold true for everyone. Like, I'm not the person that sees apparitions. I'm not sure I'm saying the word correctly, but
you are
perfect. Yeah. So I don't like, I'll wake up and I say I wake up because I had that experience. It's the one that stands out the most in my mind. I woke up and I knew I had a sense there was something standing beside my bed. And I just know, like, I didn't actually see the figure.
Yeah.
So that is where that comment comes from, but I wouldn't make that blanket comment for every single human. I think it really depends on what we're most in tune to with our spiritual gifts that we have.
Yeah, that's interesting because I honestly don't know which one I trust more. Because I couldn't tell you the clairs if I had to, what each one means, but I can see the spirits, but I also have a very strong inner voice. You can say it's a higher power. You can say it's my guardians. You can say whatever it is, but whatever it is that tells me the night before that I need to go take this and I need to go put it by something that I'm going to remember in the morning. Otherwise, I'm going to forget it the morning afterwards. I'm in touch with kind of all of them. So I don't know if it's my gut is stronger than my eyes. But I also know that when I do talk to spirit, dead people, whatever you want to say, I'm not tied to only people in this dimension. I can actually feel and hear and sense people from other dimensions as well. So to me, that's more of a knowing, not really a seeing or a gut feeling. I just know they're there, but I can hear them in my head and I can describe them and I can run with that. Excuse me, based off of what I'm sensing and what I'm feeling. But it's interesting because you're always told to trust your gut. Even with what you see, trust your gut. But some people don't trust anything unless they see it. It has to be, like you said, it has to be that 3D. It has to be right in front of them. Otherwise, they're like, that's not real. And the paranormal field is a perfect way to describe that. If they don't see the entity that I'm talking to, they're like, nope, you're just crazy. Or you're just talking to voices in your head. I can't see it. It can't be real. So your statement is very true. I was curious about which one you lean heavier on. Is it your gut or your eyes? So it sounds like it's more your intuitiveness, your guts, your feelings, and it is your eyeballs.
Yeah.
Your eyes will steer you in the direction you need to see, but it's really your feelings and your intuition that you're feeding off of to make sure you're pushing the right direction.
Yeah. And that's where I reference the body, because how many times have you been around someone and the hair on the back of your neck stands up?
Oh, yeah.
Or you get that, like, it might not be your gut though, right? You might get goosebumps. Your body is giving you these warning signals that something's off here.
Right.
And when I sat in that interview, like everything in my body was like, something is so off here. And I went into that meeting so clear, and I walked out of it so fuzzy and confused in a way, like when we talk about our mindset and thoughts not necessarily being ours and being influenced by the energies around us,
Right.
literally affecting the thoughts that you think. I walked out of there and I was like, there is no way, there is just no way that this is something that doesn't involve spiritual. Like this is there's no physical explanation of this that makes sense. I've
Yeah.
never experienced anything like this. So anyway, just to bring it back to the body, it's not always the gut for people either. So just being in tune to how does your intuition and spirit move through you and communicate with you specifically, because it's not a carbon copy for every single human.
Yeah. And like Kelly, she's saying, I always go with my gut. When I don't listen to my gut, negative things tend to happen, just saying. And then Rosie's like, when I meet a new person, I have to observe them. Which is funny because I don't. I'm opposite of that. When I run into someone new, I will know instantly without even hearing their voice. I get a sense of that person. Like you, I pick up on people's energies very fast. Just being in their presence. I know if it's a positive energy or negative energy or something that I just don't resonate with. And I would say I'm more than 99.99% solid on mine through my feelings if I was correct about that person or not. Just picking up an energy, whatever the energy is, it comes off of to me as positive, negative, neutral. I've never gone to one and I've been like, I'm just not sure yet. Mine is pretty instantaneous. Like I said, I talked in the beginning about having to go by you 3 different times. It wasn't because I didn't like the energy. It was a very positive energy. I just had to make sure it was yours and not someone just standing by you every time I went by that was the same person. So when I noticed the crowd kept moving on, but you were the one who was still at your booth, then I'm like, Janessa's the one who I'm picking the energy up on, so I can go talk to Janessa. So it is interesting how each one of us have our own mechanisms to identify good or bad. When you do this, I have to ask, because we really haven't talked about what you do. And we talked about what you do, but we don't talk about, do you sit them in a room and you just kind of go through the talk with them and you're like, all right, so let's dig through your past and figure out what causes you to do that. Or is it just something is it a form of hypnosis? Do you use like light hypnosis? Do you do like a past life regression type of thing? I mean, what is it that you do to get that person to go, I'm this way and I need to adjust slightly to this off ramp and go this way down this road instead of down this high-end freeway that everybody else is pushing me down, and I'm in my own little bubble car because that's the way the government wants me to go.
So, well, first of all, I like to make the 1% shift within because it creates a 10% shift on the outside. Okay. So I love that you use like shifting to the off ramp, right? But instead of like turning our external direction, I focus on the internal direction. If we can make that 1% shift every time, you're going to get that 10% shift outside of you. As far as what I do, it's a wild combination of, like I mentioned, the Enneagram, so personality and identity. How do we see ourselves? And does that align with where you want to go? So in using the example of addiction, which is not the only thing I work with, but I do love it so much. We see ourselves as this person who is dependent upon fill in the blank for coping. For me, it was food. Mm-hmm. For a lot of other people, it's chewing tobacco or smoking or
drinking,
lots of things, eating, overweight, like all sorts of things. So who would you be if that wasn't a part of your identity? If that's not who Janessa is, who is Janessa without that? So shifting the identity of how you define yourself, who you see yourself as, the personality, there's so many aspects within our personality that can create us being addicted to different things. I really utilize muscle testing is my secret sauce. Are your people familiar with muscle testing?
Something on your site. So
Yeah.
I don't
So
think
using the energy of our body, sorry.
I just said, I don't think too many
My
people
bad.
are familiar with it.
Oh,
Oops.
not too many people are familiar with it.
I don't
So
think
it's
they are.
using the energy in your body, like you get a strong or weak muscle response. Like I can demonstrate here. If I ask my body to show me a yes, like it's a lie detector. So show me a yes, and I'm pushing on my forearm, and it's locked. The shoulder muscle, it's strong, and I'm not trying. Like you will physically see if someone's trying to muscle test and deceive it. You see it. You can't fake it. When I ask for a no and I push on my forearm, the muscle goes weak. Like I'm just holding my arm for both of those. So it's really something to experience, to really feel how much your body is this feedback machine just full of information. It wants to tell you what's in your unconscious mind. It wants to tell you what's in the soul. It wants to tell you everything, your spirit, like unlocks all the keys. So I use the muscle testing with people to really get to that root. That's how we shortcut it. That's how we know which layer are we working on first? What's your priority? How are we going to get to the root of it and not just scrape a little bit off the top? And then what do you need to do specifically for you to reprogram that in the brain or release the emotion out of the nervous system? Are we using eye desensitization? Are we using tapping? Are we using just some energy holding the front and back of your head? That sounds really flippant, but it's really powerful for a lot of different reasons of the areas that get lit up with trauma. In fact, you can program nearly anything into your brain holding the front and back of your head. So if there's something you forget to do, try it tonight. Hold your head for 3 minutes and focus on what you want yourself to do in the future, and you'll do it. So when COVID started, for me, I had a hard time remembering my mask, specifically when I rode my motorcycle. And I found myself oftentimes pulling my bandana down over my mouth to get into the store so I didn't have to go home to get a mask. And I was really grateful I wore a bandana. So I just held the front and back of my head and I'm like, okay, I'm getting my motorcycle key. I'm getting my garage door opener. I'm getting my mask. And then I wouldn't forget it. So I've used that with people too, like, oh, I trip over this like crack in the cement every single time. And I'm like, okay, hold your head, program your brain. You're stepping over the crack. You know where the crack is. You're lifting your foot. You're stepping over it. They didn't. And like literally they had fallen on this crack before. Haven't fell since. So that's a little shortcut you all can use tonight. Experiment with it. That also does a lot of emotional processing. You can release all sorts of emotions because of what's being activated in your brain when you're holding that and thinking intentionally, also with trauma. So anyway, we use the muscle testing to figure out, do we need to walk through some sort of meditative, what you had called like hypnosis? I'm not trained in hypnosis, but walk through a meditative sequence to rewrite the story, see the scene ending differently. Like, what do we need to do? And then of course, there's another modality I've been trained in that allows me to be able to integrate through people's energy systems, which is something I really love and tends to be a shortcut for nearly everything. So I have that in my back pocket for one-on-one sessions too. And literally people notice within even working with something for 5 minutes, their thinking is shifting. They don't think the same way as they did 5 minutes prior to. And for a lot of people, when it's the first time, they're like, oh my gosh, that's such a trip. How did you do that?
Right.
How is that shifting so quickly? I have for, 3 years tried to not be afraid of bats or snakes or whatever. And now I mean, I wouldn't want to go hold one, but I could be around one and I wouldn't run away screaming. How did you do that?
Right. So Rosie is asking, you may have already said this, but do you work with juvenile offenders?
I haven't already said that, so it's a great question. I do work with juveniles. I have not yet worked with a juvenile offender. And while you would think my background mixed would be a great in to the criminal justice system to work with, because of, like insurance and that modality isn't validated and it's not evidence-based.
Right.
There hasn't been a way for me to work into that population. And so I truly am just working with individuals who are self-selecting that they want something different and they're going to make that happen for them.
Nice. This is kind of a squirrel moment, but you're the one who brought it up. So we're going to ask this question. Stuart wants to know, what do you ride? What kind of bike?
Fair enough. I have a Victory Vegas 8-ball.
Yeah, I've seen the pictures of it. It's on her website. Go out and look at it, just so you know.
Yeah, it's a cruiser for people who aren't familiar. So if you're familiar with Harley, it's like that. I bought it. I think it was 6 months before Victory stopped. There are no more Victories in production. They stopped producing the whole line of bikes, and it was my first bike, and I'm like, how am I going to get parts? I don't even know what I'm doing. How could you do this to me? I'm short, and my feet touch the ground, and I didn't want to have to do a bunch of modifications, and it's a badass looking bike, so I fell in love with it, and now you're going to stop making everything. But don't worry, friends, it hasn't been that dramatic.
Now my question, now that we're done with Stuart. Oh, he says nice, by the way. When you are doing this, is this something, because trust me, no one here has asked it yet, but I guarantee someone who watches it and records this is going to ask this question, or these guys are going to watch it and go, damn, I should have asked that question. So you're welcome. Is what you do to help people, does it have to be done in person, or can you do it online?
Yeah, all of my services are virtual unless you come to an expo. And then you get the goods in person. So I work virtually with everyone. Energy is everywhere. I tried to combine those two sentences into one. Energy is everywhere. So when I speak to people, because my brain, like the Fibonacci spiral, like everything's patterned, right? We as humans are patterned. I've programmed my brain. It just starts picking up on patterns. When I talk to people, I'll start cueing into the pattern. Like this thing that they're talking about, is it a phobia? Is it just a phobia? Like someone had an experience with a snake when they were 2 and now they're scared to death of them. Right. Or is it more than that? Is there generational energy in that? And I start cueing into the patterns. And it makes it really easy to unravel and unbind the behavior when you come at it from the energetic pattern and release that energy that's holding it and binding it into place.
Nice. Rosie wants to know if you use any tools such as crystals, sage, candles, or etc.
Love that. I don't. I'm a minimalist. I'm a minimalist at heart, and I love so scalar waves, right? Free energy. Nikola Tesla taught us scalar waves are everywhere. These energies are all around us. And through intention, we can pull them into our energy field. Now, I have nothing against crystals. In fact, my group coaching is done with SJ, who owns Crystalline Current. She's a shamanic healer and a crystal healer. She's amazing and incredible, and she has all of the crystals. And I love her crystal knowledge, and I've worked through her with crystals and had wild, amazing results. So I'm not saying that you don't need that or it's not effective, but I personally don't want all of the crystal collection because I'm a minimalist at heart. So I'm like, no, we can just connect people to the energetics and use the scalar waves, the way that energy works, to connect people to those energies and get the exact same effects without having to sit with a crystal grid or to be gridded physically on your body or some of those techniques that are used. So I don't rely on them, although I do, through muscle testing and intuitively will pick up when things such as that are beneficial for people, and we'll incorporate it for each individual as their energy, their body, their mind, their emotions require to support them in the healing and releasing.
She also asks, do you call on any archangels or spirit guides to help you, or anything from the outside source to assist you in what you're doing to help others?
So I feel as though I need to answer this question really specifically. When I work with individuals, what I am doing is guiding them to activate their inner healer, because we are all self-healers. So I am not necessarily doing a thing for a person, which is why it's really important for me to educate and teach while I work with people. I never want anyone to be dependent on me, but I love to come alongside people and to support them in their blind spots. I still work with other healers because even though I am very good at what I do, I have blind spots of my own that are really hard for me to see. And so I am not necessarily calling on archangels or spirit guides or other beings to do the healing because I am actually calling on the person I'm working with through intention, belief to heal and activate their own healing. Now, with that being said, my own personal practice before working with someone is, yes, I connect with my guides. I call in the archangel. I am very connected to angels just in general. That's really, really a real thing for me. There's this beautiful story about my grandparents that recently passed, and I had an angel come and give me the message that two people in my family were going to be passing away really close together. My grandfather was in hospice, and it seemed as though the other individual would be my grandma. And my grandma was very, very lively and involved in our lives and present. And like, I was like, I don't really know, but this is what I'm getting. And so anyway, I'm very connected to angelic energy, and I definitely use that personally, but I just don't want that to be misconstrued that I'm calling in angels to do the thing for the client, when my method is really about activating that self-healing within the person. So if the person muscle tests that they need support of Archangel Michael or Jesus Christ or an ascended master or, you know, whatever, then we do what that individual would be requiring within the muscle testing.
And she also asks, good job, Rosie. Have you ever had anyone get mad and at some point you got scared when you were assisting them?
You know, not off the top of my head. This approach is really so beautiful and easeful because we don't have to get into the traumatic event and relive it. We really get to just get under the energetics. Like, what is it that you're having go on right now? Okay, let's tune into that. And then let's shift it. And the only time that we really dig into a situation is when literally the muscle testing guides us that they need to know something more consciously. They need to connect with, what am I thinking? Consciously seeing the behaviors, the event that happened in the past, whatever that is. But it's very rare for us to sit on one topic and talk about it for longer than, say, like 5 minutes. There's just not so much of the the wounds that we carry, the hurt within us. There's not a lot of opportunity to really activate and trigger it in a really painful way, because we're not getting into the details of what happened any more deeply than what's needed. And a lot of times it's not needed. It's just a matter of acknowledging, oh, at this age on your timeline, what happened then? Like recently I was working with someone, and every age that came up, there was a move involved and there was an abandonment issue connected to that. And what they were experiencing current day, they were reliving that story. So we just simply went back, acknowledged like, oh, I moved. Oh, I moved. Oh, I moved. I was afraid that I was going to be abandoned. Repeat, repeat, repeat. Okay, let's clear the energy of that so that you can be safe and secure. Make the decisions you need to make right now and move forward. So it doesn't have the intensely emotionally charged window of opportunity for people to project, displace. While I say that also, I'm not perfect. So I'm sure along the way I have, unintentionally invalidated someone or, but building rapport is really important. And I think that the majority, if not all the people that I work with, they know I'm in their corner 1,000%, and that there's just no judgment. Like, whatever is their reality right now can be shifted. And all we're going to do is just build that bridge and walk across so that you're here where you want to be. And whatever happens along that bridge building process is actually just divine for the healing to take place.
Yeah. And that actually ties a lot into Rosie's last question, but we'll see. She says, last question, what is the longest you had someone that had to come back?
It's kind of a challenging question to answer. I've worked with people on and off, like tune-up sessions, people who really like clean energy and to continue to move forward. So they'll have tune-up sessions periodically for years.
Yeah.
And then as a coach, I do offer one-on-one coaching services where you can commit to 6 months, a year, like a time frame, and walk through that period of time. So I think I've worked with one person, it was 3 years consecutively before they felt like, okay, I'm ready to just come back when I need that extra support. So everyone's different. It depends on what you've been through when you were younger.
Yeah.
And what are you really striving for? I mean, I know forever my personal development is going to be my biggest investment, because everywhere I go, there I am. And I want to be the best version of me. And I know that best version is different every single day.
Right.
And that's just how I choose to live. Not everyone, chooses that. But I know that the personal development support will always be present in my life, because there's just no quitting for me in that. And the clearer and the more I unlearn and come back to my true authentic self, the better and better I get at what I do. And then my clients get a better version of the product and the services and their growth. And I am just way too invested in what I do to give anyone anything less than my full potential, which just keeps expanding as I expand. So.
Well, good. Well, I think we're probably at a good stopping point. I've had your information scrolling on the bottom, so if anyone doesn't have it now, that's their fault. But if for some reason you go back and you're like, what's her information? Guess what, folks? That's also in the comment sections, and everyone can go back and check out the comment section. So I think, like I said, I think we're kind of at a good point to close it down. We've been talking for about an hour and a half, surprisingly enough. Yep. And Rosie ran out of questions apparently, so we're gonna go with that. But I want to thank you for coming on. Hopefully, a lot of people got information out of this. I know I did, and I'm really happy that we actually, even though in a roundabout way, we didn't get a long discussion, but you talked about scalar waves, because that's my nerdidity, like I like to call it, because I actually do the fractal and the scalar waves, and I zone in on both of those, so I kind of tie into those, part of my nerd background. But everyone's saying thank you. Very interesting show. Thank you. And don't run away when I put you backstage. I want to talk to you when we're done. But I do want to thank you for coming on. This is all kinds of cool information that I had no idea about you at all, even though people think I Facebook stalk you now because I know about your story. But that's not true. But it's a lot of information I think a lot of people will resonate with, and they'll go, okay, so now I know who I need to talk to about this, because this is something that I would have never thought about ever looking into on my own. I did not know there was someone that can shift me and adjust, best way to say it, to go ahead and help me break out of a pattern I'm in, or something that's going on that I'm just not aware of, just never resonated with me. But hey, this could be something that there's help out there for me yet. How about that? So
there's help out there for all of us, including me.
So thank you again for coming on. I greatly appreciate it. I'm gonna throw you backstage so I can close the show down, and then we'll come back in and talk to you for a couple minutes. Okay?
Sounds good. Thank you everyone for being here, for the questions, for connecting.
Yeah, I love my audience. All right, I'll talk to you in a minute. All right, everyone, that's the show. You know me, I don't remember who I have coming on next, because I just don't. So let me go here to my handy dandy phone that has all my information in it, and I will tell you who I have coming on in 2 weeks. Let's see. I have on someone. Her name is Katana K. she's kind of a catch-all. She works with the paranormal. She kind of does the life coaching. She does a little bit of everything. So it's gonna be really cool to have her on. I believe she's out of the West Coast, out in California. At least she used to be out there. I think she may have moved, but she's a very interesting talk as well, and it's going to be a lot of really cool information, like all my guests are. And I'm really not sure. I'm pretty sure with Katana we're going to have quite a few squirrel moments, which is kind of common on my show. But other than that, I want everyone to make sure they stay safe. Have a great couple of weeks. Yes, I know I owe you all a couple of podcasts. I'm working on it. Jeez, get off my back. No, just kidding. But I do owe you all some podcasts where you can go out. Again, everything is scrolling on the bottom for Janessa. Make sure you go out there and check out all of her information. The fiercelyradiantsoul.com is her actual website. It has everything on there that you can go out there for and kind of check out everything she has. Her Eyes Wide Open radio, like she says, you can look at all the past information on there. And then go out and follow her at facebook.com. She really is an open book out there. She kind of shares more information about her, what she's going through on a day-to-day basis out there on her Facebook site. So feel free to go out there too. Now, if you are looking for me, then you go out to here. Facebook.com, Stuff I Never Learned. Twitch.tv, Stuff I Never Learned. YouTube.com @StuffINeverLearned. And Gmail is StuffINeverLearned@gmail.com. I made it as simple as I could. Lowest common denominator is me, so I have to be able to remember it, so I know what to type in. So this should help you all out too. If you're looking for me, send me an email, send me a text, whatever you want to do. I don't care. But if you have questions, comments, complaints, concerns, like, follow, share, all that wonderful stuff. And I will see everybody in 2 weeks. Stay safe. I love you all very much. Thank you for being part of my family, and I'll talk to you soon.